I was one of those kids back in the day who had a Sega Genesis growing up. It was a no-brainer. The commercials themselves told us that Genesis does what Nintendo don't. How could I turn down cold hard facts like that? The Genesis had all sorts of fun games, from stylish platformers about cool characters to, stylish platformers about cool characters. Seriously, the Genesis had a lot of really clever concepts for games that made it the beloved console it still is to this day. But as you've probably guessed, we're talking about one specific game. One that's always stuck out in my mind because there's really never been anything else like it. Let's talk about Ecco the Dolphin. Ecco the Dolphin was more than just a game about a dolphin. It was an adventure, a story ahead of its time, a visionary in the world of gaming as an art form. If Sonic the Hedgehog was the heart of the Sega Genesis, the thing that promoted it and kept it alive and healthy, then Ecco was the soul, the creative spark that showed off just how good it could be. I recently replayed the first game on Twitch, and I was surprised at how few people remembered the game, or even had heard of it. Ecco deserves to be remembered, for quite a wide variety of reasons. So let's take a look back at what made Ecco so memorable and so amazing. I'll put this out there will be some story spoilers, so if you want to experience the game for yourself, I recommend grabbing it. It's literally only 99 cents on Steam. Before we get to the real meaty part of what makes Ecco so great, let's talk about the graphics. Ecco the Dolphin was released in 1992, when games looked like this, or this. Graphics were improving from the days of the NES, but Ecco the Dolphin had a much different vibe. It was more realistic, it was more beautiful, it immediately stood out amongst games at the time. And the tone of the game is set right away with the opening sequence. When you start the game, Ecco is just having fun with the rest of his pod, swimming freely and telling Ecco to jump as high as he can. The pleasant music, the nice graphics, it just gets you in a happy mood, so you jump as high as you can and... And thus, the real tone of Ecco is set. Loneliness. Of course, there are plenty of games where you're on your own against enemies, but at the time, Ecco the Dolphin captured better than any other game the feeling of being alone in a hostile environment. Your pod is gone and you have no idea why, and suddenly the happiness of the opening, combined with the fact that you're playing as a cool dolphin, is replaced by a sense of dread as you venture forth into the ocean on a quest with only a vague idea of what you're doing. And this is where the game's atmosphere really sets in. There's something inherently creepy about the ocean. The sense of depth, the crushing feeling of being so far from the nice safe surface, the idea that almost anything lurking in these depths wants to hurt you. While some levels in Ecco do take place near the surface, most of the game takes place deep under the water. You not only have to manage your oxygen by finding air, but you never know what's coming next. Around the next corner could be an orca looking to power your sonar up, or it could be a crab attacking you, or it could be a sweet Christ photorealistic octopus. What are you doing here? Seriously, this thing freaked me out as a kid. The thing about Ecco is that it's a bit hard to classify the genre. I'd say it's best described as a puzzle adventure game. Your goal in each level is to simply reach the end, solving puzzles and avoiding enemies along the way. You have the ability to use your sonar to scout the area around you, and you can eventually use it to damage the enemies, as well as a dash to take out enemies. So a lot of the game is just navigating the maze-like levels. So you push rocks. That is, you push rocks. Push rocks! Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Ecco isn't exactly the best controlling game. While it's difficult, there are a lot of parts that are difficult not due to the gameplay, but due to the awkwardness of the control. It was an ambitious game style that they went with, and while it results in a very unique experience, there are plenty of times that the game just feels weird and can get extremely frustrating to do just one thing. Oh my god, just move the shell! Alright, enough nitpicking, let's get back to the cool stuff. Everyone look at the photorealistic octopus. Ooh, creepy. Ecco eventually gets recommended by an orca to go to the Arctic and find a giant whale named Big Blue for more information, bringing us one of the most gorgeous parts of the game, the Ice Zone. And let's take a moment to really appreciate how fantastic the music in this game is. Genesis games usually had good music, but Ecco took it above and beyond to create some of the most memorable tracks of the 16-bit era. These songs always bring back the most nostalgia for me. The opening theme alone gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. Anyway, once we get to Big Blue, he reveals that the weird tornado thing happens once every 500 years, and that for more information we should go meet the oldest creature in the ocean, the asterite. Alright, let's play a game. What is the great immortal sea creature known as the asterite? Is it A, a whale, B, a giant octopus, or C, a terrifying nautilus? If you answered that it was a giant DNA strand, then rather strangely you're correct. Why did you guess that? That wasn't even one of the options. The asterite says it's weakened due to losing one of its orbs, so it sends Ecco to Atlantis to use their ancient time machine to go back to the past to get a ball from the asterite there, and it's in Atlantis that we learn the true nature of the tornado from the start of the game. A race of evil aliens known as the Vortex steal life from the ocean every 500 years to regain their own power. Ecco uses the time machine to travel to the age of dinosaurs, and here we get even more of the atmosphere that makes this game so unique. This sense of wonder at this new environment, mixed with the hostility and eeriness of it all, makes it one of the most memorable parts of the whole oh god, photorealistic seahorse! The twin brother of photorealistic octopus! When Ecco finds the past asterite, he steals the orb to take it to the present. So let's recap. The asterite was missing an orb and sent you back to the past to take the orb from its past self. But the reason it was missing an orb is because you had gone back in time to steal it from its past self, which technically means that there's always been a missing orb being stolen and returned over millions of years in a stable time loop. You still with me? As a thank you, the asteroid gives Ecco the power to breathe forever underwater and damage his enemies with sonar. He also allows Ecco to transport back to the moment of the tornado, and Ecco gets sucked up with his pod to attack the vortex directly. We then get the final 3 rather infamous levels. The first part is a straight auto-scroller that ends up going surprisingly fast, but you can get through it. But then we get to Welcome to the Machine. This is an auto-scroller that goes in all directions, and if you get trapped by one of the many fake-outs, you die and start the whole thing over. Not to mention that the vortex start attacking you en masse with what can only be described as 16-bit jump scares. This level was the bane of my childhood, but after you've played it roughly 500 million times, you should get the hang of it. But who cares about gameplay? Well, I care about gameplay, but who cares? Look at the imagery here. Look at these enemy designs. Look at the backgrounds. You didn't see anything like this at the Genesis, or NES, or even Super Nintendo for that matter. The game, which had always been a bit eerie, goes full-on horror with these enemies, the atmosphere, and not to mention the incredible music. And then the final boss, the Vortex Queen. And this is where we go fully into H.R. Giger territory. You have to literally shoot the jaw and eyes out of the Vortex Queen while it screeches at you. This isn't exactly the kind of thing you'd see in a Sonic game. At least I don't think so. I never did beat Sonic Spinball. Does that happen at the end? But the Vortex Queen goes down and Ecco rejoins his pod to swim around and be happy. And thus ends one of my favorite games, and one of the most stylish, unique, and clever games, not just for the 16-bit era, but for any era. A true pioneer of gaming, and truly the soul of Sega Genesis, a game that could not be matched. That is, until the sequel came out. Ecco the Dolphin, The Tides of Time is just as good as the original. When I say that Ecco the Dolphin is one of my favorite games, I should be more specific. Both games are on that list. Ecco 2 was not only better looking, but introduced more gameplay, more levels, and more of what made Ecco 1 so amazing. Once again, the Sonic comparison comes up. Just as Sonic 2 took the first game and refined it and added new twists, so too did The Tides of Time refine the Ecco formula. Not only are the graphics improved, but now we get these cool 3D sections that pushed what the Genesis was capable of to its limit. The enemies were more terrifying, the depths more deep, and the visuals even more breathtaking. When Ecco loses his powers after the mysterious death of the asteroid, he is visited by a descendant from the future named Trella, who brings him to a future where hyper-evolved dolphins fly through the air and travel in sky tubes of water. Huh, that sounds pretty rad, actually. There, the asteroid tells Ecco the Vortex Queen returned and killed it in the present, but more importantly, Ecco's time travel shenanigans split the time stream in two. One future that has flying hyper-evolved dolphins, and one where the Vortex took over the planet, turning it into a mechanical monstrosity. And so, Ecco journeys through the timeline to get the asteroid's missing orbs back. And let's make something clear. Ecco 2 is just as difficult as Ecco 1. It can be kind of annoying at times. A lot of the game is just finding asteroid parts and delivering them, but the sheer amount of variety is what makes it so great. You hang out in the cool dolphin future, using new powers to transform into other sea creatures, then get to spend time in the Giger-inspired Vortex future, fighting monstrosities and navigating the terrifying waterless machine world. Any one of these worlds could have populated a single game, but in Tides of Time they all work together to create one of the most unforgettable experiences the 16-bit console era could provide. While the game mechanics and atmosphere are comparable to the first Ecco, everything feels turned up a notch, taking you from sky battles with not-so-photorealistic jellyfish to tussles with horrific orb monsters. Well, as horrific as orbs can be, anyway. And it all culminates in another terrifying boss fight with the Vortex Queen, another victory for Ecco, and a memorable and surprisingly tense epilogue that set the stage for a third game that sadly never happened. There was Ecco Jr., a more kid-friendly game, and a Dreamcast Ecco game that wasn't even made by the original team. But that's okay, because the two games are still self-contained enough that even the lack of a third game doesn't really hurt them. So, that's a look at Ecco and Ecco 2, two of my absolute favorite games, and certainly some of the more unique of the time. Not bad for a game based on the psychotic hallucinations of a ketamine-fueled scientist who thought he could talk to dolphins. Yeah, that part isn't really a joke. We have a little more to discuss. Let me introduce you to John C. Lilly, neuroscientist, philosopher, and writer. In 1953, he invented the isolation tank as part of his work to study human consciousness. He also attempted communication with dolphins, although he didn't have any success with it. As the 1960s came around, looking to cure his chronic headaches, Lilly began to experiment with ketamine and other psychedelic drugs, often combining these with his time in the isolation tank. During these sessions, he became convinced he was communicating with a group of cosmic entities. The one he said he talked with the most was known as the Earth Coincidence Control Office, or as he dubbed them, the Ecco. There was also a second group called the SSI, Solid State Intelligence, made up of a solar system that was entirely mechanical and whose goal was to destroy mankind. Basically the Vortex word for word. This is all sounding rather familiar, isn't it? While it's never been officially confirmed that Ecco is based on all this, it is worth knowing that the genius behind Ecco the Dolphin, Ed Annunziata, has confirmed he's read much of John Lilly's work. It's really not too much of a stretch to figure out where some of the inspiration for Ecco came from. I should also mention that when he found out about this video, Ed politely asked me not to say anything about him taking ketamine or having sex with dolphins. So, in the interest of fairness, I will not be mentioning that tweet. But no matter where it came from or what inspired it, Ecco the Dolphin was not just an amazing title in the Sega Genesis lineup, but it was a landmark title in gaming. It was more atmospheric, more visually stunning, and certainly more creative than so many games that came before it. And it was an integral part of my childhood as well. I still have vivid memories of Halloween 1992, when I was 6 and there was a massive rainstorm in our town. So instead of trick-or-treating, my brother and I got pizza and played Ecco all night. That was a night when my perception of gaming changed. Before then, games were all bright and colorful and about fun. But Ecco was more than that. It was a dark but wondrous adventure. It was a unique experience that I would argue no other game has had the ability to achieve since then. Think about how many people probably bought this game expecting it to be a fun little story about dolphins, and by the end of just the first game, it had evolved into a time travel story battling aliens, practically a horror game at times. Or the many twists and turns that Ecco 2 took, with glimpses of futures fantastic and terrifying. The story, the atmosphere, the art style, the music, the unique but admittedly frustrating gameplay. While there are some games on the Sega Genesis that overshadow Ecco, I think it deserves to be remembered as being one of the best. It was a game that I think left an impression on gaming that will not be forgotten for a long time. And if Ecco didn't have a huge influence on gaming, well, it at least had a big influence on me. It shaped my own interest in gaming from a very early age. If you haven't played the games, seriously, check them out. They're only 99 cents each on Steam. I just hope Ecco goes down in history for all of its contributions to game design, art design, creative design, and just every type of design, really. So thank you, Ecco. And good luck with photorealistic octopus. Ah! God, that thing is scary! Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this look at Ecco, make sure to subscribe as I make 2 videos a week from my other series, Game Boy Roulette and Dollar Store Gaming. And make sure to check the description for links to the footage used, mostly from World of Long Plays. Thanks again, I'm Brian J, and I'll see you next time.